Okay, Bismillah, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is EVI SYAFITRI. I'm one of the student English Education Study Program English Department, Faculty of Language and Literature, Makassar State of University. Um, Now I will present my research proposal with the title, The Use of Visual Media Illustration Images to Improve Paragraph Writing Skill for Junior High School Students. And my supervisor are Prof. Syarifuddin Dola and Dr. Gaminia Siti Sakir, and my examiner is Sir Muhammad Tahir and Sir Muhammad Miftah Fauzan. First is background. Language is very important communication tool in life. We cannot be separated from language in carrying out daily activities. Language has a central role in various individual developments, be it intellectual, social, or emotional. And learning is a language should not only learn the mother tongue, but also need to learn foreign language that will be very usable in life. This is because by using language, every group in society can become itself as a unit that is different from other groups. One of these foreign language is English. English is as foreign language is taught in a formal school from elementary school to university level. English is formed from various basic components and skills. The basic components are vocabulary, pronunciations, and sentence structure, which are very usable in getting to the next stage, namely skill. Skill, or better known as a language skill, consists of 4 elements that make up it, namely writing, speaking, listening, and writing. These skill influence each other when used in communications. Writing activity is a form of manifestation of language skill and ability that are most recently mastered by language learner after listening, speaking, and after reading skill. Compared to the other 3 language skill, writing is more difficult to master even for native speaker of the language concerned. This is because the skill to write requires mastery of various linguistic elements and outside the language that will be content of the text. Both of the language element and the content elements must be intertwined in such a way as to produce coherent writing. Writing is the result of someone's actively placing something in an empty space dimension. Meanwhile, writing is produce something in written form so that people can read, perform, or use it. And looking at the several definitions at my research proposal, it can be concluded that writing is essentially a knowledge, namely knowing what is in the mind and pour into writing form. Knowledge here is not only in the form of words or past phrases, but can also in the form of images and combinations of ideas and images and everything that comes to mind. A person's knowledge will become clearly visible after being poured into oral and written form. And one aspect of language skill is writing. Writing is one aspect of language skill that has an important role in everyday life. By writing, a person can record thoughts, experience, feelings, and appreciations of the surrounding environment. With writing, it is also possible for a person to communicate with others regardless of the ties of time and place, so that communications between individuals that was initially impossible to reach can take place. And these writing skills are directed to convey ideas or those indirectly to the communication. The skill to express ideas, messages, and feelings in writing must be supported by the student's writing skill. The skill to write is not a skill that is passed down from generation to generation, but is the result of the teaching and learning process is perseverance in practice. So a writing skill undergo a growth process through intensive practice and systematic guidance. And writing activities are identified with the use of graphic symbols, which are combinations of letters related to the sound of the spoken language. However, to be clear, writing activities are not just producing graphic symbols. And I believe every child can write, provide opportunity for students to undergo the writing process. In writing, students have to know about grammar, vocabulary, sentence structure, and sentence sequence and sentence connection. Sometimes the students could speak English fluently, but they didn't know divine understanding writing or making paragraph. But in fact, most Indonesians students could not learn English well, especially in writing. It is usually indicated when they write paper or thesis in English. Many students make mistakes when they write paragraph. Not at all students had some skill in pouring the ideas when they write paragraph. It is because they do not have interest in studying writing skill. And here, the teacher role is to provide a learning model that is appropriate to the needs and development of students. The set of models designing is expected to be a tool for students to express their ideas during the writing process. And media is one of the media can be a sense of which function as intermediary means a tool for the learning communications process, which includes a graphic media using fewer tools, map, models, globes, and so on. And media has a positive and synergistic forces that can change students' attitudes and behavior towards creative and dynamic changes. And the role of the media is no longer seen as just a tool, but it is an integral part of the education and learning system. The purpose of using media in learning process is to streamline the learning process itself. And visual media means all teaching is used in the learning process that can be enjoyed through the five senses of the eye. Visual media, images or parables, play a very important role in the learning process. And visual media can facilitate understanding and strengthen memory. And visual can also foster student interest and can provide a relationship between the content of the subject matter and the real world. To be effective, visual should be placed in the meaningful context, and students must interact with the visual to ensure that information processing occurs. This visual media can be interpreted as a learning that tool that can only be seen to facilitate understanding and strengthen memory of the content of the subject matter. And as we know, in general, junior high school students have difficulty in writing English. Students tend to be passive, bored, and sleepy in teaching and learning activities. If this condition is left unchecked, it is feared that it will hinder the learning English vocabulary, which is very decisive in language skill, especially of writing. The teachers only transfer the meaning of the vocabulary without practicing how to write words and how to pronounce them. And students will have difficulty understanding the meaning of words, so that they will continue to assume that English is a difficult subject and has an impact on students' writing abilities. For that, we need to find a solutions why it happened, and because writing skill for junior high school students are the basis for continuing writing skill at the high school level. If they have good foundations in English, then it will be easier to follow the higher levels. In this case, the teacher factor has a very important role in building students' motivations and interest in learning. And the researcher intends to conduct a study entitled "The Use of Visual Media Illustration Images to Improve Paragraph Writing Skill for Junior High School Students." Pre-experimental research on English learning in Class 8 SMP 1 Binamu at Jeneponto. Researcher will apply illustrated images visual media about improving students' writing skill in learning English. And the research method used is pre-experiment in the form of the one group pretest and post-test design. Through this design, it will be known whether there is an increase in student writing skill. Through the use of media illustration images visual are expected to be alternative so that the students are more interested in learning English writing words. Next is a problem statement. Based on the backgrounds, the use of visual media illustration images able to improve students' writing skill in Class 8 students at SMP Negeri 1 Binamu. And about the objective of the research, based on the formulations of the problem that has been stated, the objective of this research is obtain result and information about improving or succeeding in students' writing skill by using visual media illustrations in learning English for class 8 students at SMP Negeri 1 Binamu. Next is significance of the research. After doing any activity, of course, we want to get benefits, absolutely, both for ourselves and for many. Likewise, with this research, I as the research, hope that this research can be useful for all parties. The benefits of expected in this research are as follows. The first, the result of the study are expected to be able to contribute to knowledge about visual media illustration images, namely media that can be used to improve writing skill and teach vocabulary so that students are skilled in writing word in paragraph form well. Second, make it easier for students to learn to write English vocabulary so that they can improve writing skill, especially writing paragraph. Motivate students to develop interest in English lessons, especially in writing skill. Provide experience to teacher and prospective teacher in designing the use of visual media illustration in learning English. And gaining new insight and knowledge about learning media in teaching writing paragraph with illustration of visual media. Next is conceptual framework in chapter 2. About conceptual framework, based on the personal experience, the students at SMP Negeri 1 Binamu was caused by several things, including the lack of precise approach taken by the teacher regarding learning media strategies that teachers rarely use during the learning process. These students feel less interested in the learning delivered by their teacher, which result in students not being interested in paying attention to the teacher explanation, so that the material presented by the teacher cannot be accepted by students as well as possible. With this in mind, researchers began to look for something that would be upright and could be used when learning English related to writing simple paragraph. And the stage of cognitive development for grade 8 junior high school student is still the formal operational stage, which means that at this stage they gain the skill to think abstractly by manipulating ideas in their heads without relying to concrete manipulations. And teenager can think creatively, use abstract reasoning, and imagine the result of certain action. And this means that a teacher also needs to be more creative in presenting learning that can attract students' interest so that the stage of students' development can run more and very well. So it was decided by the researcher by use of visual media illustrations. And because this media, this one of the media that can assist students in linking learning materials with students' daily lives or environments. And these students will tend to easily understand the material presented by the teachment to be more creative and presenting learning that can attract student interest so that the stage of student development can run more and very well. So this is about the conceptual framework. Next is research design. In this section, me as a research will use pre-experimental research to find out the result of particular technique. In conducting the data, the researcher will choose one class and use it as a sample. And the design of the study use a quantitative approach using an experimental method with a pre-experimental design. This means that the treatment given can be known more accurately because it can be compared with the situations before being given treatment. And this class will conduct a pretest at the first meeting to determine the students' rating scale. After giving the post-test and the first meeting, the researcher will give a treatment until the fourth meeting. In this step, the researcher will use visual media illustration images as learning tools to improve students' paragraph writing skill. And at the last meeting, the researcher will give a post-test to determine the improvement of students' writing skill. This research was conducted to improve paragraph writing skill using visual media for class 8 students through contextual learning. With this effect of treatment on this design is 0.1 for pretest, X is the treatment, and 0.2 is the post-test. The thing being tested is the differences between post-test and pretest. And if there is differences between difference where post-test is greater than pretest, then has a positive effect on increasing children creativity. And if post-test is smaller than pretest, it has a negative effect. A negative effect act as a treatment. And this method is used because the researcher only does treatment to one class, which means that he does not use the control class or comparison class. Next is research variable. This research consists of two variables, namely the influencing variable, the independent variable, and the influencing variable, the dependent variable. The variable in this study include the independent variable is the use of visual media illustration in paragraph writing skill, and the dependent variable is writing skill of the students. Next is location, population, and sample. Location is the place where the research will be carried out. The location of this research will be carried out at Junior High School 1 Binamu, Jeneponto, South Sulawesi. And the reason for choosing this location is because SMP Negeri 1 Binamu is one of the favorite school that is in great demand. So researchers have the desire to test the interest of their students in learning to write paragraph by using visual media illustration. Population. In this research, the population of the study is the second grade students of SMP Negeri 1 Binamu in academic year 22-23. There are also subject teachers who participate in providing information about the state of the class selected as the object of the research. Last is sample. It is calculated that the population of the study is quite large, so it is necessary to take a sample. Sampling in the study was carried out using a purposive sampling technique. Purposive sampling is a term that refers to a variety of non-skilled sampling approaches. Purposive sampling, also known as judgmental, selective, or subjective sampling, relies on the researcher judgment when selecting the unit to be investigated. And the researcher will choose a class that was in accordance with the criteria and objective of the research so that the research could be carried out properly. And the class selected was one of class 8, consists of approximately 30 students. Next is instruments of the research. About the instrument of the research, there are two, is paragraph writing test and visual media illustrations. Research instruments or tools or facilities are used by researchers in collecting data so that their work is easier and results are better. And the test consists of pre-test and post-test. In the pre-test, the researcher will give a paragraph writing test to students by looking at the object or media that exists, and each student will have the opportunity to In the post test, a student will be given 3 illustrated objects, which can be pictures of humans, animals, and plants. The object of this image will be described in writing by students in the form simple paragraph. And this test is carried out in order to find out to what extent the success of the learning process is carried out, and it is very necessary to hold a test. There are several forms of tests performed. The first test is pre-test, which is done before the treatment is given. The second is test that is carried out when the treatment is given. And the third test is post-test, which is carried out after the treatment is given. And next is procedure of collecting data. Writing is a series of activities that occur and involve several phases, namely pre-writing, writing, and post-writing phases. The following is an explanation of the phases or stage in writing. First is pre-writing stage. In this stage, the researcher will give a test to determine the student's writing skill before giving treatment, and the researcher will give a writing test about describing one of the illustration images. So the researcher will let students choose an illustrated by images consisting of several themes that they want to describe in written form. And in this section, the researcher will free the students to choose one of illustration provided, so they will be much more flexible in writing because it is in accordance with what they are interested in. And the researcher will ask students to describe one of the illustration images that have been provided in the form of paragraph of 5 to 10 sentences. Pre-test is given to students before they receive treatment to determine their writing accuracy and comprehension skill. Students must complete pre-test of approximately 80 minutes. This stage is writing preparation phase. At this stage is the phase of seeking and finding and recalling the knowledge or experience gained and needed by a researcher. The goal, develop content and look for other possibility in writing, so that what you want to write can be presented by properly. And for the treatment in this step, the researcher will use the discussion technique. Then students will be divided in several groups as treatment to overcome the problem of low ideas in students' writing skill. And treatment will be given for 4 meetings. And for the step, or the researcher start the lessons and introduce the topic to be taught, namely descriptive text, and gives some questions about descriptive text. The researcher introduce and explain what descriptive text is, and the researcher will show some example of descriptive text from the result of description of an illustration image. Students repeat reading descriptive text, and students understand the content of the structure of descriptive text by analyzing the text to improve its completeness. And the researcher asked students to discuss group consisting 3 or 4 people with their friends to make and start describing an illustrated image provided in paragraph form. And they then each pair word and appears in front of the class reading the result of their writing description. And the researcher provide feedback on accuracy and precision in what they hear, see, and write. And about post-writing stage, students will undergo post-test at the last meeting after receiving treatment for 4 meetings. And this test was designed by researchers to determine the development of students' writing skill who have follow all treatment. Next is technique of data analysis. There are several about the technique of data analysis, and the test used in the study is writing test paragraph, and students must be able to write paragraph according to the paragraph framework that has been made. And in this study, researcher will analyze the data quantitatively, and in analyzing the data quantitatively to get the writing score, the researcher will use a rating scale which includes content aspect, include cohesion and coherence, linguistic aspect, includes the diction, choice of word or diction, and the use of sentence. The use of sentences, and the technical aspect of writing include spelling and punctuation as well as the neatness of writing. And about the test used in the study is writing test paragraph, and the researcher will calculate the score from the components of writing. The researcher will calculate the mean score, and the researcher will calculate the standard deviation of students' writing skill. And the researcher used pair sample t-test to find out the significance differences between the pre-test and post-test. And the last is finding out of the significance difference between pre-test and post-test by calculating the value of dependency test. So I think that's all presentations about my research proposal with the title "The Use of Visual Media Illustration Images to Improve Paragraph Writing Skill for Junior High School Students." More and less, please forgive me. And wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.